Breaking news, friends. Ukraine has attacked 2 strategic nuclear airfields. These are the bases where the strategic nuclear bombers Engels and Diaghilevo are located. The oil depot was bombed. For the first time, Ukraine attacked Bryansk with ballistic missiles.
Whoa. Oh,
They're literally detonating.
basically that's where the sheds are burning. Everything is on fire. A lot is definitely going to burn there. It looks like the fire trucks haven't arrived yet. I wish they'd get here soon.
This was a powerful special operation by the Security Service of Ukraine and other Ukrainian intelligence agencies. These were the command posts for the Iskander ballistic missiles in the Bryansk region. Ukraine is also preparing to attack Russian ships in the Pacific Ocean. According to reports, Kyiv is planning an operation using naval drones hidden in cargo containers to strike Russian ships and their allies in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. Ukraine has attacked 2 out of 3 elements of the nuclear triad and is continuing further. A new phase of the SBU special operation is being prepared. Moreover, the Yaroslavl motor plant was on fire in Russia. This is the plant's workshop where engines are manufactured for the Topol M intercontinental nuclear missile system. In other words, essentially the nuclear triad. We will discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Kutayev, welcome.
Daria, good afternoon. Greetings to our viewers.
Ruslan Kutayev, we attacked ballistic missile launchers in Bryansk. This is a historic event. Let's start with that. What do you have to say about the attacks by the armed forces of Ukraine?
Well, this is a logical continuation of Ukraine's behavior. Ukraine is starting to act further and deeper. And the vast expanse of Russian military, let's say, industry has a lot of different types of enterprises on its territory. Warehouses, there are military units. And as we can see, Ukrainian special services are demonstrating, first of all, that they know where everything is located. Secondly, that they are able to reach these targets. And thirdly, that they have started to systematically and quite dynamically carry out work to destroy all of this. Here, you said it correctly. Intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. These missiles are also being destroyed. And here, I think it's appropriate to remind our viewers that yesterday, when Russia was actually preparing to deliver a heavy, powerful strike against Ukraine, Ukrainian intelligence detected the activity of these very Iskander launchers. It is known for certain that 1 Iskander launcher was destroyed and 2 were damaged. So these 6 missiles, which were, in fact, as we can reasonably assume, specifically aimed at some important administrative buildings in Kyiv, were effectively destroyed. So the beginning of this treacherous plan of Putin's was thwarted. And of course, after that, they lost the momentum that could have inspired the so-called Russian orcs, as well as President Vladimir Putin himself and the members of his inner circle. This loss of momentum, which had been building up over time, meant that any potential surge in morale or renewed determination among these individuals was diminished, ultimately affecting their subsequent actions and strategies. So look here, it's very interesting how hour by hour, the Ukrainian special services are behaving more and more actively. They not only inflict damage, but even in real time, they manage to observe, gather intelligence on the actions of Russian missile systems, destroy them, and cause losses. This is a significant improvement in the skills and conduct of the Ukrainian special services, military command, and of course, those drone operators and missile crews. All of them are acting very successfully and skillfully, destroying Russian installations and the Russian military-industrial complex throughout the entire territory of Russia.
Operation Web continues. The SBU attacked 2 airfields, Engels and Diaghilevo, that is 2 bases for Russia's strategic aviation, as well as an oil depot that supplies fuel to Russia's strategic nuclear aviation. At least 3 storage tanks are currently burning at the Kombinat Kristall oil products storage facility of the Russian State Reserve. In other words, we continue to attack the airfields of strategic nuclear aviation. Operation Web is ongoing. A Mi-8 helicopter was destroyed and a Mi-35 was damaged as a result of drone attacks, including at Bryansk airport last night. Ruslan Kutayev, the floor is yours.
These reserves, the state fuel reserves, aviation fuel, yes, 3 tanks were hit, but according to the latest information, everything is leaking from there, and another 3 tanks have caught fire. And this is ongoing, and it's possible that it will continue further. As a rule, we know that in such situations at oil depots, it's often impossible even to contain the fire. It usually spreads from one tank to another, engulfs industrial facilities, such as oil processing units, and all of it, let's say, becomes consumed by the flames. I think that situation is also not over yet. The fire is still burning, and it's still unknown how much will be destroyed as a result of this operation and the actions of the Ukrainian side.
The fact that Ukraine is preparing attacks on Russian ships in the Pacific Ocean, and that Sevastopol and Crimea have been hit by Neptunes, we'll discuss that a bit later. But for now, I'd like us to focus on a very interesting and important topic. Friends, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let me know in the comments what you think about this. Now, something exploded in the sky over Kazakhstan, something like an Oreshnik, and it broke apart into pieces. And the first to report this were Russian military correspondents, also known as Russian war reporters or Zetniks. They wrote about the failed launch of the Oreshnik. Kapustin Yar is close to the border with Kazakhstan. That night, Putin decided to attack Ukraine. He did attack it, and he surely wanted to use the Oreshnik, an intercontinental missile. Question: does this Oreshnik actually exist? Did it explode, and why did it explode? Stefan Komic, let's discuss this with you.
First of all, I served in Kopeisk. I served at the base, at the testing ground we're talking about now, in the automotive troops of the rocket and artillery forces. And indeed, intercontinental ballistic missile tests were conducted there. That area, the Astrakhan region, borders Kazakhstan, which at the time was the Guryev region. And indeed, they were tested there. They were launched from there. And this launch, I analyzed what the experts are saying. Oreshnik was most likely launched. And the fact that we have pictures and recordings most likely indicates that somewhere over the steppes, the Kazakh steppes, this Oreshnik exploded in the air. And it actually was not able to complete, not only to complete, but essentially even to begin its course toward Ukraine. What does this tell us? We know that the first time when they targeted the Dnipropetrovsk region, Oreshnik accomplished less than 5% of what Russia had expected. There was no destruction there. They hit a training center, and that was all they managed to do. And now, too, it seems they tried to use Oreshnik for this purpose as well. They were very upset. They needed to show the orcs back in Russia that they're still a force to be reckoned with, that they can do something, scare someone. But it's not working. It's just not working. With the Iskanders, they had a major failure. Ukraine destroyed them when they were deployed in the Bryansk region on the front line for an attack on Kiev. With the Oreshnik, as we can see, it was a failure on all fronts. The scattered Russian rocketmen and artillerymen, no matter how hard they try, it's just not working for them. And it doesn't work because all of this is built exclusively on Soviet-era weaponry. There's nothing new. They haven't accomplished anything. All their claims, all those cartoons remain just cartoons. And they can't get any further than that. This is the problem of Putin, the Russian armed forces, and this entire Russian fascist horde that would like to drown the entire population of Ukraine in blood. It's not because they don't want to, it's because it just doesn't happen. They can't do it. This is what we need to understand and realize.
Stefan Komic, let's return to the topic of Russia's nuclear triad, which everyone is talking about right now, and which in fact was attacked by Ukraine and its special services. All the world leaders have written about this now. They even reported it themselves. For example, Kaja Kallas officially stated that this is unprecedented. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and even Donald Trump, through his sources, conveyed that he too was stunned by the SBU's special operation. And as we discussed last time, it is necessary to attack the Russian Federation's fleet, the nuclear submarines. There is the Northern Fleet of the Russian Federation, which was attacked, and there is the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation. We discussed this with you, and just before our stream today, the Washington Post published a piece stating that Ukraine is preparing attacks on Russian ships in the Pacific Ocean. According to the publication, Kiev is planning an operation using naval drones hidden in cargo containers to strike Russian ships and their allies in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. But it's very hard for me to imagine that Ukrainian intelligence agencies would announce their attacks through the Washington Post. Why was this done? Let's in general discuss the attacks on the Pacific Fleet, the Northern Fleet, and how much of a blow this would actually be for Putin.
Dasha, let's first agree on something. The Washington Post, Bloomberg, as well as a number of other well-known, reputable, and widely respected newspapers and media organizations are not the kind of media outlets that would, let's say, intentionally or knowingly spread fake news or misinformation. If they wrote about it, then without a doubt, they have solid, credible, and well-established grounds to say so. First of all, let me emphasize this point. Second, if the Ukrainian special services, armed forces, and political leadership did not prohibit this from being published, it means they have sufficient grounds to believe that this operation is under the strictest cover, and that they are confident that regardless of the fact that this has been made public, they will be able to carry out this operation to the end. Thirdly, and this is very important, the Pacific Fleet, we understand North Korea, and right now Shogu is in North Korea. Russia is demanding soldiers, and North Korea is supplying ammunition, weapons, and sending people. And right now, it is very important. If Ukraine really does this, and I am convinced that they will be able to do it, and they reach Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, the Far East, and if they manage to hit at least some ships, movements there, I don't know, tankers, cargo. In this case, Russia will not just be put in an uncomfortable position. Russia will be in a state of, well, crisis, because that is the area where practically all those ports are exposed. Even all the military bases, everything that was there in terms of air defense and missile defense has been moved here, closer to the front, to Moscow, and away from there. If such a threat arises now, if suddenly drones start flying, and they will, then in that case, they'll have to pull something away from there, from the front, from here, from the center, and bam, transfer it over there to the Far East. That's bad news for Russia. How are they going to compensate for that? It's impossible to predict because China can't openly provide them with missile defense or air defense systems. North Korea doesn't have the means to defend against such weapons. Russia itself either doesn't produce them at all, or if it does, it's only 1 or 2 units per year. They don't have spare parts. They don't have the kind of machinery needed to produce such complex military equipment as missile defense and air defense systems. So, to be honest, these are extremely serious problems. But even here, you and I have talked about the fact that these problems would arise. We've said that Ukraine is developing its technological capabilities. Germany. Merz stated that joint Ukrainian-German production facilities will, in the coming weeks, already be sending to the front lines guided missiles of joint German-Ukrainian manufacture for Ukraine's use. These are the first results not just of supplying weapons and ammunition, but of the work of joint ventures in Ukraine's military-industrial complex with Europeans, with the British, with the Germans, with the Poles. And these are exactly the results we're seeing. That's why they're able to reach even Irkutsk. That's why there are real reasons to believe they'll reach Vladivostok as well, and everywhere else, even Murmansk. So our expectations are not just wishful thinking, our expectations are genuinely high, and all of this combined is destroying Russian logistics, ammunition, weapons, people. They can't even manage to bring them up to the front. They can't even get them to the front line zone, and that's where they're being destroyed. That's how things are working. Relationships are improving. The entire approach to everything is being refined. It's not for nothing that Russian war correspondents are making a fuss. They're talking, for example, about the appointment of Madyar as the commander of drones in Ukraine. Just look at the commotion this caused. A person who was sitting in a trench, as just an ordinary soldier or a sergeant, started out as an operator. Look at what he achieved. Is something like that even possible in Russia? Never, under any circumstances, could such a rise happen in Russia just because of someone's personal qualities. It's impossible. But in Ukraine, it is possible. And that's why Ukraine is winning. That's why Ukrainian engineering thought is ahead. Why is that? Because here the principle is, if you can, take the lead. If you know how, create. That's the Ukrainian principle, and that's why they're winning. There's no need to be surprised. They will keep making progress. That's the outlook for this war.
We can expect another series of explosions in Crimea. In Simferopol, military targets have been hit by Neptunes. There's a kilometer-long line of trucks at the Chonhar checkpoint entering the annexed Crimea. A huge number of explosions, and once again, the Kerch Bridge is under attack. There's an alert there. But before we discuss this, the segment called Occupied Crimea Sharm el-Sheikh, I want us to talk about a very important point. The West, Europe, and America didn't provide us with all the weapons because they were afraid of nuclear escalation. They were afraid of that nuclear triad. They were afraid that if they gave Ukraine the weapons it needed to win, to attack Russia deep within its territory, to drive the Russians out of our land, Russia would start World War III, a nuclear war, and so on. And now Ukraine is demonstrating that we attacked Russia's nuclear triad and there is no nuclear war. Let's just discuss this precedent together. So Ukraine did this with drones, right? And not with multi-billion-dollar weapons. In other words, we attacked multi-billion-dollar weapons, about $7 billion in total, using drones, unmanned aerial vehicles.
Indeed, at first, when this nuclear, more precisely, this aviation of the highest level, which is known as strategic aviation, was destroyed, it was a significant event. It was assumed that after this, if they ever intended to use nuclear weapons, by the way, that's exactly what they were shouting about over there in Russia, in Moscow, the war correspondents there, they were encouraging the political and military leadership to use it if they ever intended to do so. But we knew that they would never do it. Why won't they do it? Because they are hostages to the situation they themselves created. Their families, their money, their status, all of it depends on the West. They study there, they live there, they keep their money there in the West. They didn't start this war to die or for some idea. They started it because of the whim of a madman who, somewhere deep inside, was offended by something, and that the president is young, the progressive president of Ukraine, and all of this bothered Putin, his youth, his intelligence, his insight. And so he decided, as he said, to teach this jester, this clown, a lesson. And in the end, it turned out that Putin himself was the jester, he was the clown, and he was the coward. As soon as a situation arises that could be even slightly dangerous, he runs away, he hides, he's afraid to make a decision. So after this intricate and complex web, this absolutely brilliant and meticulously planned operation was carried out, he then proceeded to call Trump, and to little Trump, he complained at length about Ukraine, about the situation there, and about various terrorist acts. And yet Trump's behavior in response to all of this remains unclear and ambiguous. The president of the greatest country, the greatest and most powerful state in the world, what does he do in such a situation? In fact, a terrorist state makes some very specific terrorist demands, and Trump, instead of rejecting them, voices these demands to the whole world, making them public. In fact, these are Putin's demands, that Putin is going to respond to Ukraine in the harshest way possible. Not only did Trump not protest, he went even further and broadcasted this. So it turns out that Trump, in Putin's hands, is the tool used by terrorists. And here, America did not do what it was fundamentally obligated to do. There was no proper conduct. But in America itself, this was given a very serious assessment. They pulled Trump back. He made this statement somewhere on his social media, recorded it, and then they quickly removed Trump's recording because it was absolutely clear that Trump had basically caved in and was afraid of Putin. Over there in America, they understand that Putin is using Trump as a tool. Putin did everything to put pressure on Ukraine. Putin did everything to use Trump. He really is taking advantage of him. And all of this, I repeat, taken together from different points of view and from different platforms, no matter who is speaking or making decisions. In any case, Ukraine has not only not backed down, not only has it not stopped, and as we discussed a bit earlier, Ukraine has continued its operations. Ukraine is not looking back at anyone. Today, Ukraine understands that it will only have what it achieves on its own. It's not European weapons, it's not American weapons, but Ukrainian drones have managed to accomplish what they have. And now, as was mentioned in the Washington Post, they didn't say they would strike with American Tomahawks. No, they said Ukrainian drones would reach Vladivostok and attack the Pacific Fleet. This is the character of Ukraine, the character of the Ukrainian military, and the Ukrainian president, they stop at nothing. They keep moving forward. And only this can stop Trump, Putin, and everyone else.
Ruslan Kutayev, Russian public pages and media have reported that Putin had a heart attack, and that's why he hasn't appeared in public for a long time. I would like you to comment on this.
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. If he ever does have a heart attack, it's bound to happen eventually because blow after blow keeps coming at him one after another. Just look, for example, at the meeting between the Chancellor of Germany and the President of the United States. He arranged his meeting in a very skillful, elegant, and diplomatic way. And what a principled stance the German leader demonstrated. He did not, on any issue, refuse to support Ukraine. He made it absolutely and unmistakably clear to Trump that the country that carried out the attack is Russia, and that it is the country that is unequivocally and undeniably bringing evil. And that's why, when Ukraine is strongly supported from all sides, when Ukraine is steadily advancing on the front lines, and when Ukrainians themselves are getting even stronger, just look at how much power and how much money has been poured into Ukrainian society, just to find at least 3 people who would crow that Zelensky needs to be removed or that the war should be stopped. They can't even find 2 or 3 people to support what they've been shouting about for 3.5 years, trying to get support in Ukraine, in Ukrainian society, among the Ukrainian people. Of course, from this, not only a heart attack, I think soon he'll just completely kick the bucket. And that's why I think others understand this too, other people, even those close to him. Actually, I think we discussed this before, didn't we? Right now, most likely, there are serious talks about sending Putin into retirement, and in order to keep him from interfering, they're talking about someone from his daughters. Specifically, there's talk about Tikhonova. And that's why I think this is also real, and it's also serious. Putin understands he can't win. Putin understands. He was hoping that Trump could do something, that he could present Ukraine as a side that has already capitulated. But Trump can't do that. He can't because besides Trump, there's also Congress, there's the US Senate, and in the end, there's the American court system, and there are Americans, 67% of whom support Ukraine. And all of this together doesn't even give the Russian political leadership hope that help might come from somewhere, that by forcing Ukraine and Europe, which is a close ally of Ukraine, to submit, it would grant Russia victory. Victory is Russia cannot win. Russia needs someone to hand them victory. There is no such player today who can do that. And that's why we can confidently say Ukraine is moving toward its victory. Ukraine is doing everything to win, and going forward, this will happen much more often and more effectively. And over there on the Russian side, they know this and they understand it.
Shamkadagic analyzing occupied Crimea. Right now, we are carrying out a huge number of special operations, like at the military airfield and the Kerch Bridge for the 3rd time. And now, once again, Neptunes are attacking Crimea. Moreover, according to local social media channels, the entry of trucks onto the Kerch Bridge is closed, and when entering the peninsula via the so-called land corridor through the occupied territories, security forces are searching every truck with a magnifying glass in search of friendly drones. Well, and in general, there is already information that the Kerch Bridge is closed again, and it's expecting a strike. There's an air raid alert. What do you think?
After the Ukrainian Neptunes, the German Tauruses will follow. I have no doubt about that. They're taking aim. Did you notice? Right now, there's a lot of commotion around the Kerch Bridge, both from the land side, from Crimea, and from Krasnodar, from both sides of the Kerch Bridge, and by sea, and those maritime drones are about to come. Everything is in motion now. They're searching for the most effective way to strike. Strikes with Taurus missiles, the effectiveness of these rockets has long been known worldwide. They will definitely try them out on the Kerch Bridge. Over there in Kiev, over there in Crimea, they already understand this. They understand why. How do I know this? They're fleeing from there. These are just people. Some who came to set up a business, some who were lured in, some who came voluntarily, some who wanted to live there, some who needed to settle down. They understand that you can't build a life there anymore. They realize the noose is tightening. So what do they want? They want to escape from Crimea. They realize they could become hostages. Not hostages of Ukraine, but hostages of the FSB NKVD troops, who won't let them leave and will keep them as hostages, because there's a danger that through this bottleneck from the Kherson region, The Ukrainian army might and will definitely attack Crimea as well. That's why they will continue trying to keep these residents of Crimea as hostages. That's why everyone understands, and that's why everyone is running away.
Yes, breaststroke, freestyle, however you like, leave Ukrainian Crimea immediately. A brilliant analysis by the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Dear friends, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Write a few kind words in the comments to support Ukraine and the armed forces of Ukraine. Because we are working for an audience all over the world so that they know the truth about Russian aggression. That's why every like, every comment, and every subscription from you is priceless. Thank you. Thank you very much. As always, see you soon.
See you soon. Dear friends, please support Daria and her channel. You will hear good news from this channel many more times. All the best. Take care.